Hello and welcome back to Tidbit of Torah. In this week's Torah portion, Parshat Pinchas, we get a moment of what I might call chutzpah. The Benot Zelophehad, the daughters of Zelophehad, Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah, come to Moses and say, our father was not a part of the band of Korach. He was a good guy, and he passed away without any sons, and we'd like to ask for a change in the law so that we can carry on our father's name and we can have the inheritance of the land that he had. And Moses really listens and takes this to God, and God says, yes, the plea of the daughters is just. You should give them their hereditary holding. And it's a profound moment of change and a moment of chutzpah when these 5 daughters stand up in the face of power and authority and speak their voice and ask for a change that happens. Chutzpah is a fascinating Jewish idea because it's one that has sort of a double-edged sword to it. On the one hand, we might translate chutzpah as audacity, gall, even arrogance or insolence, a kind of negative sort of like, how could someone have the hubris, the gall to say that or to do that, right? There's kind of a negative connotation to it. And on the other hand, as my teacher, Rabbi Ed Feinstein, reminds us in a book that he wrote about chutzpah a few years ago, there's also a definition within Rabbinic Judaism, an understanding of chutzpah as a really positive thing. That which Esther had when she went to King Ahasuerus and said, I'm Jewish, and helped to save the Jewish people. That which Hannah went in her prayers to God in the book of Samuel and said, please God, listen to my prayers, give me a child, and I will dedicate that child in service to the community. That kind of chutzpah. The kind of chutzpah that Rabbi Feinstein translates as moral courage. Often we see that in children, whether it's standing up and saying something at a funeral that's kind of funny and kind of chutzpahdik, or being able to just sort of assert their authority. We see that sometimes, and sometimes a moment of chutzpah is a moment of discomfort, or it's a moment of pride, but it has a double-edged sword to it. And I think this week's Torah portion is reminding us about the importance of chutzpah when it's a moment of courage, a moment of speaking up, a moment of finding one's voice, one of standing up to power and saying, hey, maybe things could be different. Maybe you might consider this, and doing it in a respectful way, doing it in an important way. Sometimes that's how change happens, and sometimes it takes the next generation to do that. And we see that lots of times with our children and grandchildren, but we see that all around. And so I think that while chutzpah may have sometimes a bad reputation, it's also one of the profound gifts that the Jewish people give to the world, that sense of moral courage, that sense of being open to the possibility of change, that sense of being able to support one another and helping them to find their voice. One of my favorite things to do when I was an English teacher at the beginning of my career was to support my students and them being empowered to find their own voice, whether that was through poetry or memoir or public speaking. But there was nothing like being a teacher on the sidelines and having a student stand up and win a poetry contest and to give a poem that was so them, only them, that allowed them to truly find their voice. And so my blessing for us as we enter this Shabbat is to be able to support those around us in finding that moral courage and to be able to support living our lives with just a little bit of chutzpah when it's needed, and to be able to see that not as a negative thing, but to be able to embrace it as an agent of change and an important gift of the Jewish community. Shabbat Shalom.